Hello, everyone, and as always, welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. And today we jump right back into WarPlan Pacific, and I'm really liking what I see so far. I've kind of messed around with turns 1 and turn 2 to just kind of see how things work. I really like the mechanics of this game. Now, for some people, it's all going to come down to, is the AI any good? We shall see. I don't know. I really, honestly, have not played beyond turn 2 at this point on my own, and we're going to come back here and just play a game fresh, see how it goes. I think, safely tell you at this point, I think this is going to be a lot of fun against another human. Now, again, whether the AI is good enough for you to play it consistently, I don't know. But it's kind of, these mechanics are great. I've been looking for this kind of game. It's a lot of fun. It throws a lot of different aspects at you. But from what I can tell so far, it's one of those games that's kind of it's easy mechanics to play, but there's a lot going on or a lot to think about. And so, it's got a lot of differentiation, which I wanted in a, or you do want, I think, in a Pacific War game. But I think it's fairly easy to understand once you start to get your arms around it. So today we're just going to jump in. We're going to start playing the game. The Japanese, or Axis if you prefer, have already moved. And like any good Pacific War game, when you're playing the Allies, you hover over the beautiful Hawaiian Islands like a modern day Chester Nimitz, looking at your forces, deciding what the heck we're going to do. Well, one thing we're going to do is not challenge the main Japanese fleet. They are much too strong for us at this point. We've just got to let them go. That yellow counter floating off into the distance, we will have to just watch them go into the sunset back to the Japanese home islands. Now, one mechanic in the rulebook that Alvaro Sousa, the developer, mentions, and I think the rulebook is written by him, I believe, is that this main Japanese task force does not have enough oil out here to stick around. And so, as was historical, the Japanese only brought enough really for that main attack at Pearl Harbor. They're not going to be out here floating around the Hawaiian Islands harassing you for a long period of time. They've got to go back. They've got to refuel, re-oil, as it is in this game, and then they can go wreak their havoc where they might, and we shall see that unfold. All right, so here's Hawaii, and what I'm going to do is just start playing the game how I would play it. Well, the first thing I would do is probably just go survey the map. And I will say, I get it. The first turn is all scripted, and so the AI can look very good in a first turn, even if maybe, they're not. But man, oh man, did they just absolutely steamroll us. I like the challenge they've presented so far. Okay, up in the top left here, you see European resources, and there are really two resources to worry about. Now, there are special resources in this game, and they do give you a percentage bump bonus to your production, but ultimately you have resources that looks like an iron bar, and we can kind of get down in here on one, an iron ore, iron bar, whatever this is here. um, that's straight up, production resource, number one. The other one is oil. So you've got production resources and oil. They're kind of two separate things and they're tracked separately. And those are the main two. And you see European resources that are coming down in here. And, essentially this would be like Abaddon and Aden, the ports that the UK, the British, the Commonwealth are getting things down into India. Okay. Now, the Soviet Union is represented on the map. You can see them here in red. And one thing I would like to point out is I think that the developer did a very smart thing, and that is these hexes generally are 80 kilometers. Okay. Each hex is 80 kilometers. But in certain places, the map is condensed. For instance, in Australia. Australia is obviously much bigger than this. It's a much bigger landmass. But for gameplay purposes, he's actually made the hexes in Australia maybe 100 kilometers or 120 kilometers to make the scaling of the game work. And we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But I think you almost have to do that. Okay, so you see these different resources. Obviously, they're going to be, I say different, they're resources. They're all kind of the same thing. And towns or cities or urban hexes also can provide either production or manpower. All right, so manpower is another resource. Think of it as the third resource. So you have production, oil, manpower. All right, those are kind of the three big ones when you capture things, take things over. And as we get into India here, you can see we've got some manpower, we've got some production. Do we have any? Yeah, we've got some resource down here. This is rare metals. Okay, so what do these special resources do? Well, for every one of these you control, you get a 1% bonus to your production. And so if we go and look at the UK, and India is considered part of the quote unquote UK, you can see here its production and so this is what it has in base resources like this 5 or the steel that we saw up there, European production. um 64. Okay, that's what it all adds up to. Then you see this 2 here. Okay, what is that? That is how many of these special resources the UK controls. And I actually hmm this may be okay. I'm sorry. Well, see, it's not showing any for India. So, yeah, this is considered part of the UK. We control this one special resource. Overall, UK territory controls 2. There's probably something down in Australia. And this will bump the production by 2%. So, whatever the base production is, by 2% for each one of these special resources that you control. Okay, then also you see something called economy. All right, and so actually, if we totaled up all of the UK's resources or production points that they have out here, it would add up to something less than 64. It would be, let's just call it 45, and then that's taken times 1.43. So it's got a modifier for the economy. So not all production points are the same. If the United States, for instance, has one production point, it's taken times 1.57, just simulating the fact that the United States economy is bigger, is better at turning, quote unquote production or resource items into final production. All right. And so these are this is, one of the more important concepts of the game. These are your production points. All right. And this right here is production per turn. How much the United States is producing each turn in production. Then the 1 is for these special resources. So that gives you a automatic 1% bump. Upkeep is how much it takes each turn to upkeep what you already have. And it takes production, oil, and manpower to do almost everything. Okay? And so each turn, the United States is producing 369 in production, the UK 64, the Soviet Union 16, China 62, Australia 9. Okay, but there's some special factors that go into that. And so really these are the 4 majors: UK, US, Soviet Union, China. All of these are allies, all right, and allies are treated a little different. They don't really have their own per se economy. You have to ship them things. All right. So back to the United States, 369 production, 20 oil per turn. So if we did go over to the US here, let's go over here, click off that. You can see the 20 oil that the US is producing per turn. It's right there, okay? You can see manpower points that it's producing from urban centers here. You can see the resources that are giving you production here on the East Coast. You can see that Portland is also producing 25 in production. If we take the units off here, San Francisco's producing 25 in production, Los Angeles 20, okay, and San Diego 20. Those all add up to this production score for the United States, and whatever that base is times 1.57. It also gets a 1% bump. All right. So you have manpower that's very important. You have upkeep per turn, and then you have a stockpile. And this shows you you can only stockpile so much. And so manpower is now stockpiled up to 99%. Um, the U.S. is getting 30 per turn. It's up to 897 in the stockpile. Oil, 20 per turn, 9 upkeep. So we're really only getting 11 that we could add to the stockpile. The U.S. stockpile of oil is starting very low. And then production here, take 77 for upkeep, so you take 369 plus 77. The rest goes into the stockpile. And for production, you don't really have this percentage. Only oil and manpower have kind of a top-off percentage here. Logistics, that really goes into, how you can turn production, oil, and manpower into things. All right, you have to spend a certain amount of points. And let's just go and look as an example. If the US wanted to create an infantry division, just kind of forget about the name. You can name it whatever you want. But let's say that the US wanted to, or we wanted to purchase an infantry division. How much would that cost? Well, first of all, you do not have to pick the most advanced one, which right now is 41. You can go back and pick 39 and it costs less. Now, that division is not as good, of course, with all of its stats. And as I click on the stats, just kind of focus or click on the different types, just kind of focus on the stats and you can see them change. So from 39 to 40, the artillery goes from 3 to 4. See that? And then from 41, the firearms go up to 5. So every advancement that you make through your research, these units get better, but they also cost a little bit more. All right. So let's just focus on a 1941. And what is this? Assault anti-tank. Essentially, infantry has two different flavors. Assault focuses more, or like think of it as two different tech trees, okay? Assault has more offensive capability eventually. Now, back here in 39, 40, 41, there's not really a lot of differentiation. Excuse me. But once you get into 42, 43, it does really make a difference which tech tree you're going down. So with infantry, you have two different choices. Assault, which is more offensive, anti-tank, which is more defensive. Now, early on in 41, oh, now you see. When we flip over to anti-tank, so the more defensive flavor, it's only up to 1940 on the tech tree. Okay, so assault was up to 41, anti-tank is sitting here on 40. All right, well, that might go into what you want to do because this one actually costs a little bit less, but it's also got, a little less in stats. And so it's a real decision you have to make. Do I want a more offensive force, a defensive force? Probably in 1941, where we are here. Uh, Now we only have the advancement to 40 for anti-tank. We would probably go more defensive, right? We would want more of the, and let's look at the difference between these two. So let's go back to assault in 1941. Okay, so 524. Let's kind of remember those. Those are the big ones. Units shoot artillery first, guns second. So this is, artillery. That's what it is. Guns are like mortars, closer in type projectiles, and then firearms are, you're shooting from, behind cover at the enemy. So these are really based on distances, right? And so if you have a really good artillery, you're going to hit the opponent or the enemy from a further distance. And then on to guns, then on to firearms. Okay, but let's look at a 1941 assault for the United States. Okay, then let's look at a 1940 anti-tank. And you can see there's not a huge difference here. Firearms went from 4 to 5. Now, I can tell you on a scale of 1 to 9, that's actually a fairly decent difference, but there's not a lot of differentiation back here in these years. But once you get going down the path, it really will make a difference. Okay, so these things cost, different amounts of points depending on what you're trying to build. I think as the United States early on, we would try to build anti-tank, a more defensive posture. Now we may think ahead and say, well, eventually we're going to go on the offensive, but I think early on we need some divisions that are defensive. This would cost 66 production. Okay, and so we do have enough. You kind of really look at the stockpile that you have because this is being produced this turn. When we hit next turn, there will be an upkeep, and then whatever's left over will go in our stockpile. So production 66, 10 logistics, and this is really kind of the points you have to pay. It sort of goes into your, like, I don't know, the technology or the logistics network of a country, how well they can turn raw production into a unit on the other end, right? And so logistics, it would cost us 10 logistics points, 10 manpower points, no shipyard points, of course, because this is not a naval asset, 60 build days. All right. And so this would be ready February 5th, 1942. And then you just see that early on its experience would only be 50%. Every unit kind of comes in with that 50% experience. And then you see here how many of these are already in the build queue. 3. So you start with a build queue already. And where is that build queue? Well, it's right over here. It's this helmet, and it's called deploy. And as you see the maps up here, we'll go to the United States, the maps, the flags. My goodness, man, get it together. The flags. We'll go to the US, and you can see when things are going to arrive. Now, these are already all preset for us. Like, this is just automatically going to happen. The game has set up that these units are going to arrive on these dates. But as we build things and they go into the quote unquote build queue, they will start to show up here and tell us when they're going to arrive. So we actually don't get anything until the start of turn 3 because the start of turn 2 is December 21st. Well, that's not December 23rd. And so you've got to wait until the start of turn 3 to get the Colorado battleship group, the Yorktown carrier group, Saratoga. So we get 2 carriers on turn 3. That's awesome. We also get light cruisers and destroyer squadron here, and another destroyer squadron to do anti-sub work. But as you build things, this is sort of like your build queue. It's called deployment, but you'll see them here, okay? For each country. So we go over here, the UK has these. Now, if we go over here to, India, it also has them. You could build Indian units with whatever they have. If they have production points, you can use those to build units. Now, I can tell you all of these are produced in the 4 majors, but then you can do trade agreements. They're allies, so they naturally get some. Like Australia naturally gets some stuff from the UK, but then you can also set up agreements to send resources, oil, different things to Australia. But we'll get into all of that as we go along here. But this is the deployment or build queue for each of the allied countries, okay? So we're going to have to come back and decide what we want to build for the United States. We'll do that here in a minute. All right, let's put the units back out there. What's going on? And we're just going to start in San Diego, I think. Now, I went up to the top left of the resources, then I thought, let's just start with the United States. There's a heck of a lot more going on. So I think I'm going to move the units around. Now, normally I probably would go through production and the builds, what I want to build this turn, if anything. Now, also, I should mention here, you can build headquarters. The game is based on divisions. This is a division level game. But, divisions have a strength of 10. You'll see here. You can also build infantry corps small, which are strength, or they have 20 hit points. You can build infantry corps large, which have 30 hit points. And as you can see here, that costs 234 production. So, they get obviously quite a bit more expensive as we go up in size. Um, these cores can be broken down into divisions, and divisions can be built back up into cores. All right. So you'll see that here in a minute. But when we have large groupings of troops here, essentially this is a division level game. All right. Cavalry Cores. We've got Cavalry Cores, Marines, Paratroopers, Mountains, Mechanized. Now let's say we wanted to go build a submarine group. Now, a submarine group, you may see an individual name for the submarine here, like the Venus. It's not just one submarine, it's 6 to 12 submarines, okay? So kind of take out of your head that these are individual ships or they're individual planes in any way. These are groupings, okay, when it comes to the Navy and the Air Force. So naval units, air units are groupings of ships. Like if we were to build a light carrier group or a carrier group, we could build the powerful. This is for the UK, by the way. I'm up here on the UK. We could build the carrier group powerful. All right. That is not just the carrier. You do not have to put escorts with it. This is a group, a carrier group, okay? Thing with the battle group. This would be a battleship, the Vanguard, cruisers, the York. You may think, okay, I've got one cruiser out there. No, actually, you've got like 3 to 5 and escort ships all in this group. All right, so I think that's, one thing that I was having a little trouble with at the start, having played a lot of war in the Pacific. I'm thinking in terms of these being individual ships. They're not. They're groups of ships, and you kind of add them all together, and this is their stats. Okay, so even though this is a cruiser, and in other games we're used to cruisers not having anti-sub, they do here because they do have some destroyers with them. They have, maybe anti-mine stuff with them, and they're picking up anti-sub points because it's all in the group. All right, so just think of it that way. Okay, let's start in San Diego and get to plan. Now, the first thing we're going to do here is just go through all of our units, look at the situation we're in. We do have these alerts, and I think we will use them in the future to go out and look. But I think right now, starting with them is just going to confuse you a little bit. We would get down the road of supply. I want to kind of save that a little bit. So let's just start here in San Diego, look at what we have. We have the USA 2nd Marine. All right. Now, it's not called a division or a corps. The reason is it's kind of in between. It's got 15 hit points here. Um, so it's a little bit bigger than a division and a little bit smaller than a corps. I think that's because it's a Marine division, and Marine divisions are put together, USA wise. The template is a little different. Now, if you look here, it's a 1939 assault group, okay? And so that's going to have certain characteristics about it. And if we go to advancements, we can see all of the different, research we can do. And these are research centers, and you get so many points. Let's just reset all those. And now we're back to 35 for the British. Okay, now they can go and spend 35 points here to start the investment. You can just start clicking like this. You can put investment into these things, and you've got, I think there are 14 different things. And so for infantry, it's assault, anti-tank. I guess I should flip over to the U.S. The U.S. has 43 unassigned research centers now. And we can go here and look and see what year we're on. And for infantry, we have assault and anti-tank. These are the two different paths you can go down for infantry. For armor, you can either do breakthrough, which is offensive, heavy armor, which is defensive. Okay? Then for fighter groups, you have three different choices for your fighters. They can be, you can go down the interceptor path, which I can tell you makes you more effective in air-to-air combat, but has a lower range. Escort fighters have a better range, but are a little bit less competent at air-to-air combat, and fighter bombers are kind of, just another step down. It's they've got more range, less air to air. Then for the bombing, you've got close support or strategic bombing. So are you better supporting your troops on the front lines? Are you better bombing towns and resources? Okay. Naval Air is another one that you can train in, and that is how good essentially your air units are at attacking ships. All right. So that's naval air, anti-submarine warfare. You can go down that path for how good you are for anti-sub. Now that's a naval path, okay? Now one thing, and I could keep going here, but we'll get into it later. Let's just go to Assault 1939 because this unit we saw is an Assault 1939, okay? Well, if we're on assault, you see the different levels. So 1939 is the base level for assault infantry units down that tech tree. Okay, fine. Now what? Well, if we advance this to 1940, we're going to get one extra point for artillery. Okay, if we advance it into 1941, which is where we are, we're in 1941. This will get 1 point firearms, 1 point more artillery. Okay. And as we go on, you get more firearms, guns, artillery as we go down this tech tree. And you can see why assault also, gets some defense and it gets some anti-air, but it's going to get more of this weaponry. If we go to anti-tank, you see it gets some less of this weaponry. It gets kind of the same from a distance, and then it gets more defense, okay? And so that's kind of the two different flavors we're talking about. Assault has more firearms. You can see as I flip back and forth. Anti-tank has more guns, right? And then it's also got more defense, I believe. Yeah, it does. So it comes in at what, 223? Yeah, 2223. Assault goes 1122. And so those are sort of the difference. If we look at breakthrough and heavy armor, tanks, 11223, it gives you, more, I think it gives you more operation points. Heavy armor, yeah, heavy armor, you don't get those operation points, but you get more tanks. And so heavy armor is more defensive. But let's go back and talk about this unit here for a second. It's at 1939, okay? And you may say, well, I don't want it to be. I want it to be at 1941. Okay, well, how do we go about that? Well, there's no manual upgrades and reinforcements in this game per se. Per se. You can't go to this unit and say, upgrade right now to 1941. But you can do two things. For the United States, we can update or we can upgrade here the number of our production points going to reinforcement and upgrade. Okay. Now you can take that pretty dang high. You see, you can use all of your points just for, well, heck, it looks like we can go beyond that, I guess, because of the next turn. You can do all of those points for reinforcement and upgrade. And what's going to happen is next turn, when you see this upkeep here, let's just say we put this on, and you can hold down Control or Shift to do bigger numbers here. Let's just say we put it on 368, right? And we're producing 369. If there's enough things to reinforce and upkeep out here, this number next time will be 368. And we will just, have one go to the stockpile. So you can really use a lot of use this to help your units reinforce and upgrade. Now, we're not going to use that many, but we are going to use quite a bit. I would like to use like half, I think, to get some of these units built up into their 1941 models. The game will do that automatically. Okay, so we're going to just beef up what we already have. It's cheaper than building new units. All right, so you get kind of a bonus to build up your existing units. Now you may say, okay, that looks good. We're going to reinforce and upgrade. How else could we do it? A little bit, he says, because it's not going to do it totally. You do need to beef up the total number of production points going to it, but you can also here give it prioritized reinforcements. Now, I'm not going to do that because we're going to be trying to upgrade all of our land units. This would give this land unit priority. So for this unit, we're going to do a few things. We've already bumped up on the production screen, which is probably the most important screen in the game. We've already bumped up how much of US production points, or did we? I think it was at 178. Well, that sounds pretty good to me. Way to go, AI. Or set stock values. We're going to put this on 178, which is going to, for upkeep, use 178 points next time if it needs them. Now, it may not need all 178, but probably at the start it will for the US. For the UK, I'm going to hold off. Now, the UK is only spending 5 for reinforcement and upgrade, but I would actually want more of this production going to India. And why is that? Well, we got to build Indian units as fast as we can, and we have no transports to take UK units to India, so we're going to have to build Indian units, and we'll get there. We'll get there in the near future. All right, what else are we going to do here with this unit in San Diego? We're not going to make it priority, all right? It does need to build up. It starts under strength, so it's going to have to build with those points to get better and better, okay? But what else are we going to do with it? Well, there's not much else we can do with it. It's 1939 Assault. Now, some of these units will have an ability to go to garrison, and let's go look at that. So here we are in San Francisco. You see this envelope here. It says this unit is in active status, set to garrison. Okay, let's talk about it here in a moment. But first of all, USA Ninth Corps. This is the Ninth Corps. Cores, it's a core large, which means it's, like a level 3 or 30 hit points. This is a big unit. All right. Now, later on, I will be breaking this down into 3 separate divisions because we've got a lot of ground to cover. And so we'll break these down. And how do you do that? Right here. Detach a division from unit. Now, I'm not going to press on it, but if I did, it would pop a little division, like a little baby division out here um, in another hex, right? Because you can't stack infantry or ground units. I should call them ground units. You can't stack 2 ground units in one hex. So it pops out right here, another division, and this large core becomes a small core, but it'll have 20 hit points. This division will have 10, and then we can split the core again, the small core, and you would have a 3rd division, and you'll have 3 divisions sitting here at San Francisco. But we're not going to do that yet because we don't need to move them. It's kind of more convenient to leave them together here. And so um, what we are going to do, and you can see this is also a 1939 assault model here of core. We want that to build up. So, the game is going to have to take those production points. It'll put some in here. It'll put some down here to start building these into their better models. All right. We don't want to give it, no reason to give it priority, right? Hey, I will say this. If you ever are off of something and you click on it and you don't see this screen that tells you everything about the unit, just click on this, unit details. All right. So what we are going to do is put this on garrison mode for now. This will use all of its operation points. How many does it even have? It's got 6. No, it doesn't. It actually doesn't. I'm sorry. Let me correct myself. It does not use them all, but you can't flip back and forth in one turn. So this turn we can put it on garrison. We would have to wait next turn to click it back to active. All right. So let's put that on garrison mode. And now we go back and look, it is garrison. If we came down here and look at the unit, they're actually represented a little differently, but it is now, you can see it right here, garrison status, and then if we click this, set to active. Why am I doing that? Why has that happened? Well, because units on garrison status have half of their combat value and half of their operation points, but they only use 25% of the amount of production, the resources for their upkeep. and oil. Okay, so they use less resources, that being production and oil, than units that are on active status. Well, while they're just sitting here in San Francisco, we might as well put them on garrison status, have them use less stuff. Okay, now if for some reason the Japanese landed here next turn, they would only be at half strength. We would have to put them back at active very quickly with an operation point. Now they defend at the same level, but their offensive capabilities are only at half, whether it be move or attack. Okay, um, so we're going to put that on garrison, and we don't need to do anything else there. Let's go back down to San Diego now, and let's look at the naval units we have here. Okay, we have a submarine squadron, the Grayling. Now, when you look at a hex, you see here we have two surface groups here, 0 carrier groups, 2 surface groups. Um, and these are like merchant marines, escorts, whatnot. So we've got 2 surface groups here. Yep, sure enough. Destroyers, the 27th Destroyer Squad. All right. And the Grayling Submarine Squad. Okay. What are we going to do with these? Now, a submarine squad, I believe, is 6 to 12 submarines, so it's not just the Grayling. Remember that. And let's look at the Grayling. Okay, it's a submarine group. Its strength is it's got 3 hit points. Okay, experience 50, effectiveness. Okay, it's got 2 operation points, and it's long range submarine 1939. Well, if we go back to our advancement tree here, and we will fill all of these in eventually, and we look at 1939 long range submarine, you can see here long range submarines are really used to go more distances, to be more defensive, surface combat. If we look at attack submarines, they don't do as well on the surface. They do have more of this defensive score. Okay, and so they're much better at avoiding combat, avoiding the different elements coming after them, anti-submarine warfare. Whereas surface, here we go. It just tells us long range submarine has a larger hull, endurance, payload, and it has 50% more supply capacity. So these submarine units carry oil out with them that allows them to stay out a certain number of turns, okay? And so that's called supply capacity. Now, if we look at attack submarines, stealth, dive speed, evasion, payload. So they have more that they can do when they get out here. So this one happens to be a long-range submarine. All right, and it's back at 1939, so it has none of the perks here yet. If it gets to 1940, its surface ability, fighting on the surface, will be better, and then if we get to 1941, its defense will be better. Okay, let's go back to the Grayling, and we'll actually click off the Destroyer Squad, so we're just selected on the Grayling and it takes 1 operation point to get out here. So what do we want to do with this? Well, let's look at the unit again. It's got only a 1 surface right now, 6 defense, range 3. This is how far away from an enemy unit it can attack. So an enemy naval unit, and it uses 1 oil per turn. Okay. Now it says down here 2. We'll get to that. Oil use 1. Okay. Now down here you can disband the unit if you want, but let's not do that. And because this is a long range sub, I really would like to get it over to Australia. How am I going to do that? Well, I could go out here and you can see this could move 24 hexes with 1 operation point. So it can make it all the way out to Hawaii if we wanted it to. But I don't really want to do, and then go on from there. But I don't really want to do that. I actually want to send this over to Australia. I want this to go to Australia and then to get up into the Philippines, up in that area where the Japanese are very active right now. So let's right click on Australia. Whoa, where to go? It's in the loop. Fleet will be at destination in 1 turn. Oh, wow. Okay. So when it comes out on the other side of the loop, so rather than having you sit there and do that, I got to figure out where the Australian loop comes out. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I didn't go look. I figure it's somewhere near Australia. And here you can see India, West Coast. So it's going to come out right here. All right. Um, so that's kind of cool, right? You don't have to do that. It will just appear here next time, and then we can bring it up here from the north. Okay, so let's go back here. We've now taken care of the submarine railing, and we're going to go to the destroyer squad. Now, what do destroyers do? They're essentially anti-submarine units, naval units, destroyer group. And so I forget how many are in a destroyer group. You can go look. It's very easy to find stuff in the manual. But in the destroyer group, there are a number of destroyers in here, and it's got a 5 anti-sub capability. All right. Now then, what are we going to do with this? Well, I wanted to protect our convoys. And how do we do that? Well, we get on the convoy, uh, the route here. And you can look at the if I hang this over here, you can look at what convoy route this is. This is the, down here to the bottom left, this is the South Pacific convoy route. And so we're going to put this on the South Pacific convoy route to protect our convoys. Now, this time we're going to get it way down here. Now, these have a radius of 24 hexes, which means essentially this can protect convoys 12 back from it and 12 from the front of it. Okay. And so up to 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It can go to here. Uh, Essentially, and then 12 back. It's got a radius of 24, which just so happens to be how far it can move each time. Now, we're going to use its second operation point to move even further down here into the South Pacific. All right, so we're going to use this, and you want to put it on your convoy route. All right, so if any Japanese subs show up within 12 hexes or 12 hexes on either side, it will try to engage those and do anti-sub. All right, so that's destroyers. We've got more of them. So if you kind of, want to know more about how that works, we've got more to put out here in San Francisco. We'll get there in a second. LA, again, this is Infantry Division. It's just sitting here. We may as well put it on garrison. So we'll put it on garrison. All right. And so it'll have less attacking ability, of course, but it uses less production and less oil. So it's just going to sit here with garrison. Now then, let's get to an air unit. The first time we're seeing an air unit. And this is the 3rd Bomber Group. Okay. It's got a strength of 20. Excellent. This bomber group is made up of, it's got a made up of 3 groups that do air to air. Okay, and then I think this is, gosh, I forget now. How did we set these? Let's go to the options. Go to the options. Forget how we set air. So it's operation dots. Okay, it's got 2 operation points. This is air to air. This is tactical bombing. This is naval air bombing, and this is strategic bombing. 3. Okay, well, this is a very nice, kind of well-rounded unit. I like it. I like well-rounded units, he says. It's got a strength of 20, experience. Here's its actual scores, all right? It's got 5 in air combat, 5 tactical, 5 strategic, 2 naval air. So, not nearly as good naval air. You might expect that with the 1 there for naval air. Anti-sub is 3, not terrible, not great. Anti-air, okay, defense. It's got, this is the important part, range of 10 and oil use of 3. So when you use these operation points, it really stacks up. These are expensive to use, oil use 3. All right, so it's sitting here at LA. What can we do with it? Nothing. We don't have any transports. You can load these on transports, but it's only got a range of 10. So we can't really take it anywhere. Now you can land these. Now we can't double stack air units, okay? There's only one air, or air counters, I should call them. There's only one allowed per hex, but we could put this in any clear or light woods hex, or any like an urban area right here, you can put these out here and it kind of automatically creates an airfield. But let's say you wanted to put it here on rough. Well, if we went here, you can actually build an airfield here if you really want those airplanes to be right here. So you can build airfields, but for clear or forested areas, you don't have to do that. You can just fly them here. I could spend one operation of its two operation points and put it right here. But for this game, I mean, there's no reason to do that. It's going to sit here at LA till we can get transports here to take it somewhere else. Okay, a headquarters unit. Here is a headquarters unit. The most important thing to remember, and this is First Army headquarters, is that headquarters give a boost to the effectiveness and the logistics. It gives a +1 supply to each hex within 5 hexes. And it gives a plus, oh gosh, I want to say it's +4%. Yes, it's +4% effectiveness to each unit, every unit. They don't have to be, you don't have to go and attach units to this headquarters. Automatically, all units within 5 hexes of this headquarters will get a +4 effectiveness, and all hexes within 5 of this headquarters get a +1 for supply. And if we go look at supply, every hex has a supply level based on how far away it is from supply sources. If you've played Strategic Command, this looks very familiar. The system works almost identically. So if you've played Strategic Command, you kind of know how that works. So this headquarters is back here. I don't see any reason to keep it, off the coast. Let's go put it at Morro Bay. Now, headquarters cannot attack, but they can defend. And so we may as well put it here at a defensive place. There is a port here, and it's got a strength of 10. So this will take 10 transports to move it out here. So when we get transports, when they've been built, we'll bring them into Morro Bay. Well, we won't bring them into Morro Bay. All you'll do is click right here, embark full operation points, and if we have 10 available in the pool, 10 transports available, it will automatically show up on the screen when we click that button. Okay? We could also move things by rail, but here it wasn't on rail, obviously. But when we get to things that are near rail, we will move them. You can move them by rail by clicking. This will be, highlighted at that point. You can click on it. You can also use truck supply, so you can build that up. If this was completely out of supply, but we had trucks built up, you could click this button. Now, they're one use only, and they go away. But you could click on this and come supply that unit, give it a +1 supply, which is right down here. Right now, it's got 3 days worth of supply if it has none, or if it's in a 0 hex, okay? The other things headquarters can do are call in tactical air offensives, and it will bomb every enemy unit that's, I believe, within 5 hexes of the headquarters. So it's very powerful. It can repair and upgrade enabled within command range. And so you can repair and upgrade things, give them a boost with your headquarters if they're within 5 hexes. Um, or disabled. I think right now this is showing it is disabled. Okay. Right. And it's also, I mean, headquarters have their own stats here. And so they've got a 5 on the defense. They're not totally helpless. Okay. This is set up as an anti-tank 1939. So it will actually progress and become better. So don't think of headquarters as being completely passive counters on the board. Now, every headquarters has a general with them, or a commander. Let's call them commanders with them, that has certain abilities: combat 4, mobility 4, tenacity 4. You can kind of figure out what these are. They give buffs to the units within 5 hexes for combat, how much mobility they have, and how likely they are to surrender. A higher tenacity score, less likely to surrender. You can replace these as you build up command points, and you get 1 command point per turn. But the more you spend your logistic, now this may be kind of backward. You may say this is a little backwards in your mind, but it kind of makes sense. The more logistics points you spend, the more likely it is you get a second command point per turn. So it's kind of encouraging you to build more units, and as you build more units, you get more command points, and then to replace these guys costs a certain amount, and you can pick who you want. Alexander Patch, Douglas MacArthur, Joseph Stilwell, Stanley Geiger. Okay, and here's their breakdown. MacArthur, a 7 combat, 4 mobility, and a 5 tenacity. Meanwhile, Geiger is pretty good in combat, but he's got a lot of tenacity. Geiger will not often surrender. Okay, and so those are the 3 scores for your commanders, and you can replace them when you have enough command points. All right. So this headquarters, it's just going to sit here. There's nothing for it to do. Let's take supply off. Now we have our logistics network on. I like to see that because when you see supply, you can see a main supply is 9 and then it radiates out here, right? But on rail lines, it stays a 9. And so when 2 main supply places are connected by rail, every hex that is on that rail is going to be a 9. Now, moving across mountains, of course, costs a lot more quote unquote supply points. And so something here would only be supplied to a level 4, something sitting right here to a level 9, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's keep moving units. Let's see what else we've got. Let's take that off. And we've now moved the command up. We've got units that are just, we can't really do anything with. We're now in San Francisco. We've got the 9 Corps. We're not going to split them up yet, and we put them on garrison mode. We'll have to flip them back to active at some point. What do we have for plane? No, I'm sorry, for naval. Naval is always second. We've got a destroyer squad, and we've got a light cruiser destroyer squad. All right. Now, let's actually go look at this. It's got us 5 for surface combat, 5 for anti-sub, 3 for anti-air, and 5 for defense. Okay, what's the difference between a destroyer squad and a light cruiser squad? Well, let's go find out. Back at this time, not a whole lot. They are absolutely identical at this point. So this is called Warships 1942. And if we go look at advancements, let's go see what that means. Warships uh, are all about hull size, gunnery, tactics, radar refits for older World War I battleships and smaller naval ships. Okay, so we're trying to build up our smaller naval ships or our older ships into more modern ships. Okay, what is large warships? Hull size, gun size, anti-air, deck, and belt armor for modern battleships. All right, and so modern we'll put here. Older stuff or ships that aren't as good, pretty much ships that we start the game with, we're going to be on the warships tech tree. Okay. Okay, well, both of these are anti-sub, really. They're 5. You know, they've got these light cruisers eventually, as we proceed, may help with some anti-air and do something like that. But right now they don't. But so let's pick one of these. Let's just pick the straight up destroyer squad. We want this protecting convoys. Now, I would kind of like to space these like 12 apart, right? But unfortunately, we don't quite have enough at the start to do that. But I think I really want these to protect out here, you know, kind of along the coast. And so if I click back 12, let's see, or go out 12 from San Francisco, it's kind of, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I do believe if we put it here, then it will protect back here. And then let's go get the other destroyer squad, the 14th, and we'll just put it right out here, 12 away, right outside San Francisco. And now they're on this escort, the South Pacific escort path. Now, how else could we protect this convoy route? Well, let's go to trade convoys, okay? And I'm sorry, that's the map thing. That shows you where the trade convoy is a little bit better if you can't see this. Let's actually go to convoys. Oh, it's that big ship, you dummy. There it is. Okay, so now as the Allies, we right now have 12 escort ships. This helps prepare or protect our convoys, all right? And so this is the convoy screen, and we'll get back to this when we get done with the US because we're actually going to set up sending things to the Aussies. All right. So how would we protect the South Pacific? As you can see, there are 6 active convoy routes. Which of these routes do we have ships on or convoys on? Well, the war just started, so 0. We have none out there right now. But now we know that we're already protecting South Pacific, and I know that I want to send stuff to Australia. So how are we going to protect that? Well, right now we have 12 what are called escorts, and these escorts will help also protect your convoys. So while these destroyers are out here hunting for subs, trying to kill them, these are just kind of defensive, trying to protect the convoys themselves. All right, and so we're going to be. Yep, it's telling us we have no convoys. Okay, well, let's go set one up. And how are we going to do that? All right, well, your convoys are over here. Now, the United States, we're on the United States, it is automatically sending supplies to these holdings of the US, these ports out in the Pacific. This is automatic. Now, you can go look at the port. We could go to Honolulu. We can go to Pago Pago, Nomaya. These are all the different places that we as the United States are sending production oil supply. We're sending them this amount, okay? That's automatic. Every place that you hold and have ownership of, it will send out the amount of supply it needs through kind of this convoy system, really. But then if we want to oh, so this is actually, yeah, okay, so this is just straight supply. It's not sending any production. These are just supplies. Okay, that's fine. It's all automatic. There's nothing you can do about it. But let's say we want to send some stuff to Australia. Now, why might we want to do that? Well, let's go back to the build, all right? And let's go to the Australians. And the Australians need units. They need to build a division, all right? And if you look here, it would take 78 production to build a division, 10 logistics, 10 manpower. Well, if you look at the Aussies, they have plenty of manpower. They have plenty of logistics. They just don't have the production, right? They also don't have any oil, but production right here is the big one. They just don't have any. And they're only generating 9 per turn. This would take what, like 8? I'm no mathematician. This would take 8 or 9 turns for them. And I mean, we're way past the point where they need units, right? Now, you could back this off to a 1939 advancement and make this let's look at this. 39, here are the stats, all right? 42, here are the stats. You can see 42 is a lot better with these stats. So we want to build a 42. Now, we probably want to do anti-tank to up the defense. The Aussies are going to be on the defense. So we really want to build this 3rd division, but we are nowhere near having the production. So let's go to convoys and let's have the US send the Aussies some production. How do they do that? So US to Australia, and you see the max that the United States of production it could send to Australia and the max amount of oil. So you know what? You can hold control down or you can hold shift down and it just goes max. I'm going to send 92, a full night, everything that I can send from the US to Australia. Why is that? It is much more important that we build Australian units and get them out around Australia than it is that the United States be back here building units. It's just far more important. So we're going to send them all of the production we can, and we're going to send them all the oil we can. All right. And how is that convoy? And once you do that, what do? Create trade. Now you see trade created, Australia, 92 production, 3 oil, not supplies. Now this is supplies are automatic. And now you see active convoy in the zone. In the zone, baby. Uh, okay, now we want to protect that. We have 12 of these ships. Let's bump that up to 10. Now, why 10? Why not all 12? At 10, you completely protect any convoys in that route. 10, that's the gold standard. You want to have 10. Now the problem is you kind of have a deficit. You don't have that many escorts, and so as the British start sending things through the Bay of Bengal to like Rangoon, let's say, or in the Indian Ocean, uh, there, down here, if they start sending things, other places. Now, we probably aren't going to be sending things into the East China Sea, the South China Sea, Indonesia. We can kind of forget those. We have them as, convoy routes. We could use them, but we're probably not. I mean, that's too close to Japan, right? Um, it's probably all going to be these three: Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, South Pacific. Now, Indian Ocean, I can tell you, is the route from the UK to Perth or to Australia. So we're probably going to need 10 in Indian Ocean as well. We also have to go into Rangoon, so 10 here. But early on, we're going to use these 10 until we deal with the Brits. We're going to set this now. We can always back this off, and until the turn goes, it's not going to matter. For now, we're going to set this at 10. Okay, so now we've got this export, and you can see it in red from the United States, supply to all these places the U.S. controls. All right, and it says supplies going to here, and then also to Australia, by agreement, we're sending them max 92 production, 3 oil, so the Aussies can start building units because they just don't produce enough on their own. Okay. Okay. Now we've kind of gone through destroyers a little bit. We've got them also out here hunting subs to the extent they would come up here and try to hit our naval units as they come out of port or something. Um, Right. So now we've got this air unit here. This is the fourth bomber group. Again, its range is 10. There's nothing we can do with this until we get transports. It's just got to sit here. This is a tactical bombing group, an in close bombing group, right? This is also, so these are both tactical groups. They're not the big B-17 fortresses. They're not the big strategic groups. These are tactical groups, okay? Um, One thing that we can do with these, though, on the off chance that the Japanese come here, just like with land units that have two different settings that they can be on, so land units can be on active or garrison, air units have two different settings. They can be on mission only to where we're doing a mission. So in this, kind of idea here, what are the possibilities? Well, it's very unlikely the Japanese are going to be attacking Santa Barbara by land, and we're going to need close in ground support, right? So we may as well put this on bomb naval as their mission. Now, we're not going to actually be on mission, though. We're going to flip it to the other one, full support. And this is kind of like commander discretion. If a naval unit comes out here and the game thinks it's a good idea, this is almost putting it on like automatic pilot a little bit. When you have it on mission only, it will only do the missions it gives you. Or it gives you, you give it. But when you have it on full support, it will attack things up to its range kind of at commander discretion. So if something Japanese shows up out here, it's going to try to bomb it if the game thinks it's a good idea. And so that's kind of, again, commander discretion, full support. We're going to put both of our air units on full support. This one was already on there. We're going to put that one on there too. Okay. Um, rightio. Then we've moved a lot of units here. Okay, let's get up to Seattle. What do we have in Seattle? We've got the USA 3rd Corps, and this is a large corps. Again, another 30. We will probably break this into 3 divisions eventually, but we don't need to now. It's entrenched. We haven't talked about entrenchment. It happens automatically as you sit in a hex. So the longer you sit in a hex, the more you entrench. This is 1939 assault. It's another one we're going to have to build up. And let's put this on garrison duty. So it's just going to sit here in garrison duty until we can actually move it. All right, fantastic. And moving on, there's nothing else we need to do there. Then we're going to the 18th Destroyer Squadron. So this is another anti-sub squadron. And we're just going to pull it out here a little ways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just going to put it right. Oops, didn't do that. We don't need it quite that. We could scoot everybody down, but I'm not going to really do that. I'm just going to have this actually about right here. And this will protect Seattle and Vancouver. All right. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'm just going to put it right there. I'm going to put it right there. So an enemy unit to get in here, if it's a sub, would have to go through it. I guess it could maybe go around this way, but it would have to go through it. So we've got that. That makes me want to actually pull this one up a little bit. But I don't want it right off, we'll get more. We'll get more. There's never enough destroyers to go around. This one we're going to bring all the way down here, kind of halfway. So we're going to put it out here by Tonga or someplace like this, maybe just south of Nomaya, because the Aussies need protection over here. They don't have any destroyers, not that many at least, by their own, and so we're going to bring that one all the way over here. Now, the only 5 or above level port in Australia, on this side of Australia, is Sydney. All right. And so level 5 and above ports go to a level 9. You can see Sydney here is a level 7. Those ports are very important. They can completely resupply naval units, really with no restriction. They also can repair naval units. And so anything 4 and below cannot repair naval units, 5 and above can, and it's got almost unlimited supply to reconstitute naval units. So to the extent your naval units are hurting, just take them into a level 5 or above port. All right. Let's get back up here and see if there's anything else we need to do. We put that on garrison. We'll also put the Canadians on garrison. Fine. Canada doesn't really have its own economy per se. I mean, it does a little bit, but there's Canada. It's got 7 production. It's got some stuff in stockpile. If we did want some Canadian units or whatnot, you're going to have to send it from one of the 4 majors. You can kind of forget about the Soviet Union and China, right? It's going to have to come from the UK or the US. Right now, we don't really need that. We'll just have that on garrison. Perfect. Now, before we move on from the US, though, we've still got build points for the US and the UK. Now, the UK only has 61 in its stockpile. It needs troops. What's the cheapest thing it can build? A 1939 division. No, no. We're going to continue to stockpile here, or we'll send things to India, which reminds me, we should go back to convoys. Now then, UK to India. All right, so UK to India. You see it lit up. The max they can send is 16 and 6 for production and oil. We're going to send it all. We're going to send it all. Okay, 16. Just hold the shift down, key down if you want max. Go to 6. There we go. All right. Perfect. So as you can see, the Commonwealth or the UK gets a lot of stuff from its holdings in the Commonwealth. So it, receives a lot of things here in green. This is all automatic, allied, okay? It also owns Syria and Sandakan that send it stuff. This happens all automatically. There's nothing you can do about that. It also exports supplies, just like the US does, to its holdings in the Indian Ocean and elsewhere. Uh, so you can see here, it's sending supply to all of this. It's part of the reason, really, its production is quite a bit lower than what you would suspect in comparison to the U.S. early in the war. It's sending supply and using a lot of its production to do that automatically. It's going to keep these ports in supply to the extent it can. All right. Now then, we want to send this stuff to India. We just create trade, and the trade is created. It will always put it, or you can always put resource convoys first. Resource convoys first. Why did it put this at the bottom? Where did this go? It's right here to India. Well, that's oh, I get it. So it puts all the imports first, no matter what. You can click on this to make sure for your exports. You can go down here very quickly and see who you have agreements with. India, it's going to send India the max. Again, why are we doing that? Well, let's go to production and let's look at India. India's got 29. That's actually not terrible. That's not terrible. 29. only for oil. It's got a ton of manpower, right? India and China will have a lot of manpower. It's actually got pretty decent logistics stockpile. And so we're going to start trying to build Indian units as fast as we can. And as we get over to India, you'll see why the Japanese are really threatening us there. Um, okay, we've moved the United States. We've moved all of its assets except for one. Now, this is kind of tricky. You see the Alaska Islands come down here. You see Dutch Harbor. That is going to be our one Alaskan kind of base. Now, you could put things over here if you want, I guess. But Dutch Harbor, it's got a size 1 port. It's the only one out here in the Aleutian Islands that has a port. It's got a size 1. This is where things have to disembark. You have to bring it, if you wanted to put something else here, you would have to bring the transport here. It's just showing you where the port is. You know, you can't bring it up here and unload it. It's got to be right here. It's got an infantry division out here. Wow, okay. It's on garrison. Excellent. So this will build up. It's a 1939 assault. We may eventually take it off Dutch Harbor because it should advance, you know, and it will be actually a nice assault division. Excellent. Now, see again, we could set this to active. You do that with that envelope. All right, so that's the U.S. units out there. We've also got Midway. Let's back up to make sure we get them all, right? We've got our destroyer line here, including one all the way out here. We've got a sub steaming its way to Australia. It'll pop out here next time. We've got a bunch of islands to deal with out here. So we've already looked at Dutch Harbor. Let's go look down here at, well, it's Midway, right? Yes, Midway Island. Midway Island also has an infantry division on it. Wow, that seems pretty strong. Uh, 3 strength though, right? That needs to be built up fast. It's at 3 of 10. It's a 1940 assault model. Okay, it's already on garrison. You can tell because the NATO symbol turns into that garrison symbol. It's just sitting here waiting, seeing what this main Japanese task force might do. Let's back up a little further. Now, you do have um, an airfield here at Johnston Island and a level 1 port. And you may say, what is this 1? It just means it's a smaller airfield. You can't put as much big aircraft in there, but we'll get into that when that becomes an actual issue. Okay, this 1 though is showing you it's actually a smaller airfield. Smaller port airfield, I think the game calls it. Let's look at these islands out here by our destroyer group. Again, you have these smaller airfields that you could fly into. There's also a port out here in the Marquesas Islands, French Polynesia, same idea. Now, we don't have any units out here, but we could. Um, and you can see this is where they would have to disembark. This is almost considered like a beach hex for these smaller hexes. Right. Let's go on. Let's look at Samoa, Pago Pago. Always very important out here at Pago Pago. We've got an infantry division. It is actually on active status right now. Let's put that on garrison so it's using up less. That looks good. You can see here on Tonga, we have the UK 114th Garrison Unit. All right. On Suva, what do we have? We have the Kiwi, the New Zealand 8th Brigade, and we also have some New Zealand air assets. We'll get to them when we look at New Zealand. We do have a garrison on Canton Island. Wow, okay. It's only 2 of 10. They better build. We should maybe even give this priority, right? This and Midway and yeah. Why don't we do that? Let's give the islands priority and see if they can build up fast enough to cause the Japanese some headaches. So let's go here to Midway and give that one priority too. So now it's got priority. And if we look at the counter, you can see it on the counter. The counter honestly has just a ton of information on it. Oh, one thing I want to mention before we stop for this episode is these units, they're not only, you may say, well, gosh, that's not a lot of flavor. The infantry units can either be assault or anti-tank, kind of offensive or defensive. There are also up to 14 different specialties that you can give your units when you have enough points to do so. All right. and we'll get into that as we go along. So I think I'm going to stop this episode right here. We have done a lot. I have talked a lot. We're playing the game, and I know it's kind of slow, but I really want you to kind of understand why I'm doing each thing I'm doing. To the extent you don't, or something wasn't clear, let me know in the comments and we'll talk more about it. Now, I am going to continue on here right after I record this, and I'm going to make another episode, and we're going to keep going. And by the end of that episode, I hope to have all of our units moved, or garrisoned, or shuffled about for turn one. And I'm really going to focus next time on talking a little less and moving more so that we get all of our units moved for turn one. Now, as you see, we still have Pearl Harbor, and we've got subs that we need to get out here. We've got destroyers. Now, a lot of that we may not do for a turn or two until the Japanese clear the area, but we do have a lot of naval groups that we can look at. We also have air assets here at Pearl, but we will get into all of that next time. I really like this game. I like the setup of this game. I like the mechanics of this game. So far, it's looking really promising. All right, guys, this has been Strategy Gaming Dojo. I will talk to you next time. I'm out. Have a good one.